Welcome my dear friends, this document presented by R.P. Saraf. Draft paper to be presented at the Hanumangarh Conference, Rajasthan, India. Present world corporate system, the root of all ills, needs to be restructured on the basis of a nature-human-centric agenda. This document is divided into 4 parts. In this video you are watching Part 3. Part 3. A realistic response to the environ-bio crisis lies in restructuring it on the basis of a nature-human-centric agenda, given the world corporate system as the cause of the current environ-bio crisis. A realistic response to the latter, that is, the crisis, is, and can be, to restructure, or update, the world corporate system on the basis of a nature-human-centric agenda, comprising the following points. Vision. The nature of our planet and the 21st century's social reality of interdependence of nation-states provide the nature-human-centric paradigm, the vision of one world, while the 1945 UN Charter gives one the vision of sovereign and independent nations, a vision contrary to the existing reality. Fundamental principle. The fundamental principle of the above-mentioned vision should, firstly, be to put the people and the environment at the center of global activity, that is, to serve the people's interests, on the one hand, and to take care of the environmental conservation, on the other. Global order. The fundamental principle of nature-human-centric vision and its enviro-human priority demands that the UN be restructured on a democratic basis, style, and organization. But the UN, as it stands today, lacks this quality. The UN General Assembly's structure and functioning is quite democratic. But its top decision-making body, that is, the Security Council, is characterized by highly unfair and totally undemocratic norms, that is, the permanent membership for the militarily most strong 5 nations and their special veto rights. Obviously, any attempt to fully democratize this body would, at this moment, encounter stiff resistance from the 5-member privileged club. So, taking into account the existing global power structure, it seems that the full democratization of the Security Council will take some more time. For the time being, the rule of special veto powers should be done away with, while retaining the norm of permanent membership till the change in the ongoing balance of power. All other seats in the Security Council should be filled through election by the General Assembly. The rich countries' control over IMF and WB be reduced and the poorest countries be provided more voice in the WTO. Development model. The fundamental principle of people-environment priority, which is imperative for human development, demands a new type of development model that stands for a 5-fold fundamental principle, that is, environmental sustainability, equity, with 1:5 difference in incomes, productivity, democracy, and transparency. This 5-fold fundamental principle corresponds with the biosocial nature of humankind, that is, it coordinates the man's self-interest with his social interest. The people-environment-based development model represents the updated concept of development in contrast to the 2 traditional national development models, that is, the corporate-led and the government-directed. While the corporate-led development model singles out profitability or productivity, which ensures the interests of money owners alone, as its sole aim, the government-directed one opts for socialization, or the nationalization, of the means of production as its only goal, which serves the interests of the ruling politicians and bureaucrats. Both these traditional national models serve only the self-interest of humankind, contrary to his biosocial character, that is, comprising both the self-interest and the social interest. Again, they do not accord any priority to environment and any place to the upholding of democratic and transparent norms in the economic or growth process. Further, while the corporate model totally rejects the principle of equity, or social justice, the government-directed one fully ignores that of political equity and productivity. This model differs with both the corporate-led and the state-based development models on the issues of their purpose, management, and style. While the corporate model stands for developing the capital and capital owners, and the state model advances the interests of its ruling politicians and bureaucrats plus the labor aristocracy, the nature-human-centric one serves the interests of people and environment in general, and the poor and deprived sections in particular. In management, while the corporate sector upholds the monopoly corporate management and control and the state sector supports the monopoly bureaucratic management and control, the nature-human-centric development model stands for democratic management and control of public limited companies by elected joint committees, each comprising 2/3 elected members from ordinary shareholders, and 1/3 elected workers' representatives in place of permanent corporators. In style, contrary to the authoritarian and secretive corporate and state style, the nature human-centric development model stands for democratic, transparent, and accountable style. Global peace and security, a nature human-centric development model, first of all, needs a stable and durable peace and security. To establish such a peace, it is necessary that the politics of domination, privilege, and special powers be discarded, mode of confrontation and military solution be ended by total disarmament and vesting the full control of nuclear weapons in the UN, political, economic and cultural inequalities be ended and the development gap between the developed and the developing countries and that between rich and poor be removed. Politics, nature human-centric politics requires a politics that is based on fully democratic principles, functioning and structure. Such a politics necessitates the ending of the rule of special veto powers in the UN system and the introducing of the principle ensuring the maximum possible empowerment of the people in decision-making corresponding to the necessary dilution of the party centralist power. Economics, nature human-centric economics demands a rational and realistic economics whose concepts, laws, and rules are required to be framed in the light of former's two top priorities, that is, humankind and environment, and 5 principles, that is, environmental sustainability, equity, productivity, democracy and transparency. In view of humans' biosocial nature, both Adam Smith's basic economic principle of self-interest and Marxian basic economic rule of state nationalization of everything are one-sided in view of humans' biosocial nature. But, ironically, both measure development, prosperity, and progress in terms of monetary growth and not in the context of human and environmental development. Value system, nature human-centric value system calls for a way of life, or lifestyle, that is embedded in basic human and environmental values and promotes rational humanist and environmentalist thinking, behavior and organization among the people. Approach, nature human-centric approach should stand for scientific realism which studies and interprets natural phenomena in the light of scientific facts and social objects on the basis of authentic information and data. The above agenda will enable us not only to face the challenges created by the corporate mismanagement to the environmental and human resources, but also provide us the way to make their judicious use in future. India's unsustainable social order needs to be restructured on nature human-friendly basis as India proceeds ahead in the first decade of the 21st century. The mass mood remains as usual marked by despondency and despair. Obviously, such a mood is always an outcome of people's perception of an uncertain future which, that is, perception about future, evolves out of the disorderly state of ongoing matters. A topsy-turvy state of India's ongoing matters. This is, firstly, obvious from the mismanagement of the day-to-day mass problems, or infrastructural facilities, decreasing quality and quantity of drinking water in the rural and urban areas, horrible picture of sanitation in towns and villages, power cuts and its irregular supply and sometimes even non-availability, dilapidated condition of roads, traffic jams, late running of trains and even air services, deterioration of education which inculcates the sole motivation of self-seeking, money-making, and power-grabbing, rising costs of health services making them non-available to poor and deprived, poor working of telecommunications and postal services. Spoiling of people's health by daily rising pollution, insanitation, food adulteration, substandard drugs, illicit liquor, etc. Secondly, it is visible from the all-pervading corruption in every walk of life, that is, obtaining of a ration card or a gas facility, getting of water, electricity, or telephone connection, admission to hospitals, schools, colleges, and professional institutions, hiring of a shop or a house, reservation in railways, purchasing of a ticket for any significant debate, exhibition, test match, picture, music, or dancing show, etc., can only become possible by paying an illegal, or black, price. Substandard goods, short weight and overpricing go on unchecked. Bogus employment exchanges, false universities, forged currency dealers, hawala firms and fake passport and visa agencies, chit fund companies, etc., continue unhindered. Tax evasion, money laundering, smuggling, drug trafficking, manipulation of foreign trade, transfer of black money to foreign banks, bank frauds, securities scams, stock market racketeering, arms, heroin and gold smuggling and infiltration on the border and at the airports with the connivance of security personnel, etc., thrive quite at ease. Corruption has become the general way of India's governance. Nothing moves in the country without illegal gratification. Thirdly, corruption is also evident from the black money generation in Indian economy. It constitutes nearly 60% of the GDP and is concentrated in the hands of about 3% of India's population. It imposes a very heavy burden on the Indian people by sapping their purchasing power. Fourthly, India's human development record shows a massive level of deprivation and a subhuman level of living. Complied on the basis of data released by WB, UNDP and Indian government, the state of human development emerges as follows: 62% of the people come under the category of poor. Nearly 40% live in absolute poverty. 40% have no access to basic health facilities. 75% have no proper lavatory arrangements. 10% live in urban slums. 48% are totally illiterate. 5% are unemployed and 33% underemployed. 33% have no houses of their own. 10% are invalids. About 12% are landless, constituting the poorest strata. Over 53% children are denied the right to basic and quality education. Nearly 75% women suffer some form of oppression. Fifthly, India's environmental performance, as per the UNDP report, 1999, reflects a disgusting position. According to it, India may be paying a very heavy price for its developmental process, which is bringing in its wake ecological devastation and numerous health problems. A conservative estimate of environmental damage puts the figure at more than $10 billion a year, or 45% of the GDP in 1992. If higher estimates are used, the Indian development model is causing a loss of $13.8 billion or 6% of the GDP. The above report further adds that the urban air pollution costs India $1.3 billion a year, while water degradation leads to health costs amounting to $5.7 billion every year, nearly 3/5 of the country's total environmental damage. According to Indian official figures, out of a total of 143 million hectares of cultivable land, nearly 60% suffers from soil erosion, waterlogging, and salinity. Another 16 million hectares is afflicted with ravines and rivulets. Sixthly, India's economic working is so poor that, despite having the 1/6 of world population, it is, on the basis of its inadequate performance, considered to be one of the least developed countries by all the international bodies and the developed countries. Seventhly, India's political process aims at money-making and power seizing as the only goal of human life. This goal is to be attained and retained at all costs, whether by hook or crook. All Indian political entities, that is, political parties, executive and legislature, faithfully adhere to this goal in their respective decision-making processes and action plans. While all unfair means are adopted to achieve this goal, corruption, double-dealing, that is, saying one thing and doing another, and muscle power, organized into mafias, count a lot. Eighthly, India's systemic norms of behavior, deriving their inspiration from corporate culture, emphasize money and power as the basic inputs of decision-making and promote manipulatory ways to achieve these inputs. Ninthly, India's diplomacy and defense, while waving the flag of Gandhian nonviolence, has always followed the politics of gun in its external matters. The gun approach has logically adopted militarization and domination as its main themes. This is obvious from the fact of defense having been the country's top priority during the last 5 decades. Tenthly, India's administration of justice is based on antiquated laws which help the haves and disfavor the have-nots. The first condition for a proper administration of justice is that it should be guided by socially just and relevant laws. But the Indian legislation lacks this quality, having been riddled with loopholes. This has provided favorable occasions to those unworthy elements who had been able to sneak into the ranks of judiciary and police for bending the law according to their convenience. It has also enabled the offenders and their counselors to exploit the loopholes in their favor, thus tinkering with the process of justice. Besides defective legislation, thousands of obsolete and archaic laws have created a jungle of rules, regulations, and procedures. As many as 1,300 outdated laws out of a total of 2,500 central laws and nearly 15,000 useless laws out of a total of 25,000 state laws have been the source of corruption in the central and the state government offices, thus causing trouble in the disposal of public business. The tardy judicial process of imparting justice with a backing of 3 crore cases pending before the courts is another form of the denial of justice to the people. The citizens' access to law remains restricted due to the enormous costs involved in the lengthy process of justice in which the endless series of appeals tire out the contenders, particularly the victims. The problem of defective legislation, delayed justice, and high costs involved in the process of seeking justice is as old as independent India. Various commissions and committees have made a number of recommendations as remedial measures. But the problem has only aggravated. Why matters have gone wrong. The first reason lies in the misconceived version of Indian nationalism, which stands for majoritarian nationalism at home and hegemonism abroad. The second reason rests with India's centralist and unaccountable social system. The third reason resides in India's corporate-based development paradigm, which favors the rich and shuns the poor and deprived. The fourth reason is located in the money and power-oriented motivation of political parties as well as people. The fifth reason is contained in the unscrupulous lifestyle of politicians who file false returns of their election expenses, enter into shady deals with the mafia dons, rouse religious and caste sentiments to achieve their ends, make false promises with the people, follow the politics of Iram, Gairam, and say one thing today and another tomorrow. The sixth reason exists in India's communal and casteist policies, which divide the people in the name of religion and caste. The seventh reason is based on India's politics of gun, which generates quarrels all around. The eighth reason is found in India's perpetual confrontation with Pakistan, particularly on the question of Jammu and Kashmir state. The ninth reason is connected with fundamentalism of various hues, Hindutva, casteism, free market ideology, class-based revolutionary theory, etc. Managing matters realistically. The problem of the realistic managing of matters requires the restructuring of India's corporate system on nature human-friendly basis. This involves the taking of following measures. Adoption of a new vision of nationalism, based on the present fundamental social reality of the interdependence of nations by discarding all classical national visions, i.e., Gandhism, Hindutva, or Mandalism, etc. The first two of which are religion-oriented and the third one caste-based. Recognition of people and environment as the two top priorities of national agenda. Upholding of global peace and discarding of the politics of superpowerism and confrontation in all matters. Resolving of all conflicts through peaceful means by reconciling the interests of parties concerned, defusing of regional tension points, proceeding towards complete disarmament, vesting the control of nuclear weapons in the UN, doing away with the special, or veto, rights of a few countries in the international bodies, establishing of the relations of equality among different countries, and step-by-step ending of the wide developmental gap between the developed and the developing countries. Resolving of Jammu and Kashmir problem by a tripartite settlement, between India, Pakistan, and Jammu and Kashmir people, which entrusts the management of Jammu and Kashmir state's defense and foreign affairs to an Indo-Pak, or SAARC, condominium, ensures an independent status, minus defense and foreign affairs, to Jammu and Kashmir and the maximum possible autonomy to each ethnic region in that state. Similarly, other tension points among the SAARC countries be resolved either bilaterally or through SAARC mechanism. To establish a peoples-based political system in India by taking the following steps. To organize India on a federal-confederal basis, giving a federal status to the states and a special status to Punjab. This will help in resolving ethnic, communal, casteist, and lingual tensions in India. All the existing conflicts, whether peaceful or non-peaceful, to be resolved through dialogue. All institutions to be fully democratized. The rule of law to be upheld and exercised through the empowerment of the people, which will, step by step, be developed from the village to the central level. People to have the right to information and also the right to call for a plebiscite on any national or state issue. The interpretation of the law to be vested in the judiciary. Any controversy between the judiciary and the legislature on any law to be decided through a plebiscite. All laws giving special rights or privileges to a group of people or individual, whatever his status, except those meant for weaker and deprived sections, to be abrogated. All social and economic disparities to be ended. Elections at all levels to be state-funded, free from black money and muscle power. The aim of development to be peoples-friendly and environment-friendly. That is, to promote people's interests, on the one hand, and to protect environment, on the other. To involve the people, especially the women, in the work of population control and environmental conservation. This development model stands for a five-fold fundamental principle, that is, environmental sustainability, equity, with 1:5 difference in incomes, productivity, democracy, and transparency. This fivefold fundamental principle corresponds with the biosocial nature of humankind, that is, it coordinates the man's self-interest with his social interest. The people-environment-based development model represents the updated concept of development in contrast to the two traditional national development models, that is, the corporate-led and the government-directed. While the corporate-led development model singles out profitability or productivity, which ensures the interests of money owners alone, as its sole aim, the government-directed one opts for socialization, or the nationalization, of the means of production as its only goal, which mainly serves the interests of the ruling politicians and bureaucrats. Both these traditional national models serve only the self-interest of humankind contrary to his biosocial character, that is, comprising both the self-interest and the social interest. Again, they do not accord any priority to environment and any place to the upholding of democratic and transparent norms in the economic or growth process. Further, while the corporate model totally rejects the principle of equity, or social justice, the government-directed one fully ignores that of political equity and productivity. This model differs with both the corporate-led and the state-based development models on the issues of their purpose, management, and style. While the corporate model stands for developing the capital and capital owners and the state model advances the interests of its ruling politicians and bureaucrats plus the labor aristocracy, the nature-human-centric one serves the interests of people and environment, in general, and the poor and deprived sections, in particular. Nature-human-centric value system calls for a way of life, or lifestyle, that is embedded in basic human and environmental values and promotes rational humanist and environmentalist thinking, behavior and organization among the people. To adopt a four-income defense policy, based on peace, cooperation, and friendship with every country in the world. To organize the regional defense in South Asia and reduce the defense expenditure by 50% after the resolution of Jammu-Kashmir problem. Thanks for watching. This document presented by Mr. R.P. Saraf, founder of Nature-Human-Centric People's Movement. Your comment and suggestion is required on this document.